You are watching the New American Media.
You are listening to the Agree to Disagree program on thenewamericanmedia.com.
Hello and welcome back. This is Brian. We are on the Agree to Disagree program. The reason we have these station identification breaks is because we have so many people finding our content on YouTube. It really is one of the best late-night ways for people digging into crazy to start, like you said earlier, connecting the dots of what in the hell is really happening here. Because it's, you know, I remember Alex Jones being the crazy guy. that would occasionally be on Coast to Coast AM, and
sure.
I remembered him the angry crazy guy, and then I'd find him more and more often, and then I'd be driving across the country and I'd check him out on the local radio stations, and I said, you know, he's sounding less and less crazy. Where it was 30% rational, 70% crazy in the beginning, I've inverted that to this guy he's doing homework, whether you agree with his conclusions or not, or if you agree with 100% or 70% or 10%. There is a lot of fact wrapped up in a lot of what he's saying. And so I guess you've been in a unique situation, John, where being able to kind of man the fort while he's out there covering the Bilderberg convention. Can you talk to the audience here for a second about what the Bilderberg group is, what Alex reported back to you and your understanding of it, and kind of moving forward, how does that play into our daily lives as American citizens?
Well, that's so you employ the shotgun out the back door technique also, do you?
Thank you very much.
Fine.
I learned from the best.
Nice shot, actually. You hit a bunch of stuff. Well, first of all, the Bilderbergs named that because of the hotel where the meeting was first discovered. They are the visible. Now, part of this is fact and part of this is opinion, so it should be obvious which is which as we go along. Or maybe I can just eliminate that and say, it appears to me that these are the visible players. These are the visible chess pieces on the board. These are the kings and the queens and the rooks and the bishops. We are the pawns. The knights would be the military. An attack piece which moves 8 different directions. But it is my feeling, and it is only my feeling because I don't have enough thoughts to articulate precisely what this feeling is, but to cut it short, you don't see the faces of the players at that chessboard. You see the hands, maybe, and if you don't see the hands, then at least you see the pieces move around the chessboard, but you don't see the actual players. You never will. And this is because these families are centuries old, and their children are not allowed to tell their parents what they plan to do with their lives. They're bloody well told what they're going to do with their lives, and they bloody well do it because they have the power of life and death over large portions of the world. So the Bilderbergers are made up of the Henry Kissingers and the, I think Romney was there, and Bill Gates goes there. So this is just a meeting of finance power and financial power and politics. And it's interesting because Don Lucchese in Godfather 3 said, finance is a gun. Politics is when to pull the trigger. And that's really true. They just go hand in hand. So what Alex found out there, without, going into, speaking for him, is that the police who were holding the protesters away occasionally would say things like, don't think that we're with the Bilderbergs, we're not. Okay.
Very interesting.
Well, that's good, but you still got your gun and your baton, and I'm sure you'll do what you're told as humanely as possible. But they'll have to do it because that's their job if they're called upon to do it. And I have another question, Brian, which is, why do we know where this meeting is being held? If it's such a super secret meeting of the super elite, how is it that they are discovered and picketed?
Now, until recently, people never knew what this was. Until the last several, what would you say, 5 years, 10 years? I mean, it was very lunatic fringe and then more mainstream. And up until this year, I would say very recently, people had never heard of this. People had no idea, but you're posing the question, why do they know about it now? I don't have an answer. I'd like to hear your thoughts.
Well, just remember your Francis Bacon. Francis Bacon said, truth is so hard to tell, it sometimes needs fiction to make it plausible.
Okay, hang on. Let's do that again. Let's do that again. Say it one more time for our listeners to wrap their brain around that.
Sir Francis Bacon said, truth is so hard to tell. It sometimes needs fiction to make it plausible.
Okay, meaning?
Meaning that if you're going to perceive that there's a world government, then, well, you need to get a little glimpse of it. And in this case, my opinion is that the Bilderbergers are the fiction. They're not the ones that run it. They're the ones that we see. The truth is the unseen. The truth is the names of the actual power holders.
Okay.
And there's no telling there's no telling who they are.
So
they could be occupying an office as innocuous as logistics and systems analytics, not the big mahogany office that says president on the front door. You never know who's really running things.
So you might see Dorothy and the lion and all of these people, but you're not seeing the man behind the curtain yet. You're just hearing a voice. And
yes, he's the truth. That big face up there in the smoke, that's the fiction.
When you pull the curtain aside, there's somebody behind the curtain sitting there. Maybe it's some rickety desk, some cheap hotel.
If no one acknowledged the presence of a shadow government or even the possibility of one, well, there'd be no reaction. People would just ignore it. In fact, that's the biggest thing that would be a problem for any sort of an ultimate globalist agenda is, what if the people just did nothing?
If they did nothing to resist, if they did nothing to acquiesce,
right?
Like continue their normal life.
Yeah, they don't worry about it.
Okay, so
they just don't participate in it.
So they want people to see something, so they can start getting ready to accept something, as opposed to. Okay, this is really interesting how you're putting this here. It's
I can draw a contemporary parallel.
Okay,
make it a little clearer.
Yeah, please.
Several people who are personal friends of mine are, in fact, Greeks, men and women, and they go over there frequently to see family. They still have the Greek accent and everything. What they will tell you is that the people have money. The people have plenty of money. It's the government that doesn't have any money. It's the bankers who don't have any money.
And the bankers run the government.
That's right.
Okay. So the people are fine, but the banks who loaned money to other entities through the government because they run the government have overextended themselves, went on a drunken excursion like a sailor on holiday or somebody going to Vegas for the first time, and now they are in a bad situation, and they're looking at the people saying, hey, people, fix my problem that I gambled away, and the people are saying, hell no. So now it's austerity versus socialism, communism, Marxism, however it's defined, and it's basically someone else's problem turning into the people's problem, is what you're saying.
Exactly. Or at least they'd like to make it the people's problem, but they may not be able to.
Right.
You know, why would you, if you have 4 other partners, and you're doing the most work, your productivity is absolutely the highest, it's undisputed and unquestioned. But now you split the company into these 5 pieces, and you're producing the most.
Germany, right?
Well, that's right, you're Germany. So the question is, why would you loan money that you can ill afford to loan to one of your partners who has no money and does not have the productivity to ever repay that money, but because you are partners and because his division is sinking, now you need to bail him out with more money that you don't now actually have. Before you had it, but now you've loaned it, now you have much less, but now you're going to be called upon to put your own self out on the clothesline so that you can bail out this partner. Why would you do that? You wouldn't.
Because it's the right thing to do. That would be fair. that would be fair, right? That's what I've heard our president say lately. That's just the right thing to do. It's the right thing to do.
Me, it's just, brother, it's just so transparent to me. It's like, what makes anybody think that you can take 3 countries? One of them produces virtually nothing, but it's a great place to, go spend some tourist bucks or something, but it doesn't produce anything. And those tourist dollars aren't that big. It's not like there's a 5-star hotel for cheap on, every little peninsula, every island out there. What made anybody think that these countries were going to be able to hold up even their end of even their part of the end of the log, let alone the whole end of the log. Why would they do this? Answer: so people like Soros. This has been brewing since the 50s. It's so people like George Soros can become zillionaires through currency exchange, because it's a lot easier to play currency exchange, which you're just dealing with dollars and euros and a few other currencies.
Now that is,
the czar.
The
czar doesn't amount to anything.
That is the man that broke the Bank of England, George Soros, I believe. And prior to this show, we spoke a little bit off air, and you mentioned the Hitler connection, kind of talking about the man behind the curtain and the Bilderberg group, and you brought the World War II reference, and I think this is a good point to just kind of shift gears to that for a second, because we talk about the boogeymen, but who are financing the boogeymen? Take it wherever you want to on that one.
Well, it got my attention when I began reading this book by Paul Manning called Martin Bormann, Nazi in Exile. This was a very comprehensive work of all the corporations and so forth that had been set up by Martin Bormann in the last 6 months of World War II. When Hitler knew that it was going to be a military defeat, Bormann said, "I'll work it out so it turns into a commercial victory. How's that?" Hitler's like, "I'm all right with it, just as long as they don't get their hands on me, because this is going to be bad." And they all understood that. And they got all of their most expert scientists and engineers. They got them all out, and even the managers for the various factories, different industries. All these managers were expert businessmen and women, so they just got them out of there. And they gave them a choice of the Middle East or South America. But when you read in this book just the roster of companies that we now do business with every day, you realize how much closer we are to everything that was going on over there. From the aircraft they were developing to the nuclear programs they were developing to the rocket program they were developing. It's just, we wound up using all of that stuff. Now, when we're wanting to be facetious, we say, "Oh yeah, well, we all know that the Cold War was our German scientists against their German scientists." We financed the Bolshevik Revolution. We shipped all kinds of hardware across the Murmansk Straits. The first thing they did, according to my dad, was take "Made in USA" off of it. That's why for so many years their stuff looked just like our stuff. I bought this old Russian jet, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago. And then as I was working on this thing, I called to the man who had hooked me up with this aircraft broker and said, "You know what? This sure looks like our stuff." And he said, "Oh, it is our stuff. I don't think there's a metric part on the whole aircraft. It's all just regular old English standard, 3/4, and there's no 9 millimeters or this or that."
Well, and that's pretty much, that was, what was that, Operation Paperclip, right? The one that brought all the Nazi scientists over to the United States to create the American space program, which was the Nazi space program. It's just capture the technology and utilize it.
Yeah, now a few of the Japanese, when they surrendered, they went ahead and committed suicide, but they didn't insist on Hirohito coming down from his throne. They left him in place, left the Japanese people some dignity, and also let their medical torturers walk because they couldn't understand it. And so they said, "If you'll turn over all your research to us and translate all of it thoroughly for us and accurately, we won't prosecute you." And that's how that went. Whereas on the other hand, Europe's a little bit different. English is a little bit more commonly encountered language there. They just took them one after another down to the basement, and the ones that didn't commit suicide, they just hanged them one after another, including the foreign secretary. So this is not normally done, but I'm thinking Bin Laden, Oswald, McVeigh, anybody they didn't want to talk, you just get rid of them. I mean, after a while, it just becomes undeniable. There's no coincidence in the world that could come up with this.
Patsy is the phrase, I believe, that is termed. Patsy.
Well, voluntary patsies even.
Well,
I mean, there are a lot of maladjusted young men out there and women, and some of these super soldiers. That's another scary topic we can get into sometime if you like. But it's not big, young Kurt Russell looking or Schwarzenegger looking muscle guys. It's quite the opposite.
Well,
but they're just as deadly. But anyway.
Well, I'll tell you what. That's a good place to kind of pick it up here, because that's kind of wrapping up the Bilderberg update, because Alex Jones was out there at the Bilderberg meeting of, I think it's the 150 most powerful people. I think that's the number. finance and government and XYZ, and so you were able to co-host, guest host that show, which was good because a lot of people need to just at least understand the concept, or as you mentioned, maybe if they do think about the concept, then they're winning by us thinking about it. So we'll have to rethink that in a minute. But I'll tell you what, for now we're going to hit reset, and we're going to come back. We want to talk about Fukushima because we're getting questions here. And I'll leave this over the break. We're going to take like a 3.5-minute break here, John. And this question for you is from Mark Clare of Lions of Liberty. He's a regular contributor to our show. He comes on and guest hosts as well. And he said that he's had internal debate on his Lions of Liberty crew. They're a really good libertarian website to check out sometime. But on their Lions of Liberty crew, they've had internal debate about Fukushima hype versus reality. Apparently one of the people is affiliated with some sort of nuclear energy group, company, etc. And so there's conflicting opinion about Fukushima. So, John, when we come back after the break, I'm going to ask you to kind of respond to that. What is the reality of Fukushima today, a year and, 3 months later? That's a long time, 15, 16 months later. What is the hype? What is the reality? And we'll get into that more in just a minute. We're going to take a quick commercial break. My name's Brian Engelman, and you're listening to the Agree to Disagree program here on thenewamericanmedia.com.
You are listening to the Agree to Disagree program on thenewamericanmedia.com.
All right, if you haven't done this already, we need you to do this. Go on to youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia and subscribe to our page. That way you get an update every time we post a new radio show, every time we get another interview, every time we're doing something interesting, you're reminded that, hey, I like those people at the New American Media. So go on youtube.com/thenewamericanmedia and hit subscribe. We will greatly appreciate that.